Hello and welcome to another retro showcase. This is flight simulation from PSION for the ZX Spectrum, and this was released in 1982, which makes it a rival to the very first Microsoft flight simulator that was released under that branding. It wasn't the first Sublogic flight sim, but this is when Microsoft released a version of it. And I've had the cassette have just arrived in the post, and I will attempt to load it. It's 41 years old, so we'll see. If it doesn't, I have a backup plan. So I thought I'd read some information about it though, because it comes with a cassette inlay, and it's maybe a few pages. I'll read some of it. It says here, Popular Computing Weekly said of PSION's flight simulation on the ZX81, "No words can do justice to this most elegant of programs. You will not see a better computer game till PSION produced one for the Spectrum. Here it is. Learn to fly, bank, dive and climb. See the world outside through the cockpit windows. Land and take off with the aid of the many cockpit instruments." Okay, so it says here, load and run by typing load flight. So I'm using my clone Spectrum here, which is a clone of the 128. So actually slightly different instructions to load stuff. Just putting the tape in now. Oh, I need to rewind it. Sometimes tapes are double-sided, but this one on the other side it just says blank tape. So while that's doing that, I will select 48K basic, which puts it into ZX Spectrum mode from 1982, and then we do J Shift PP. Actually it says load flight, but load with any name will work. Okay, so the cassette's rewound, reset the tape counter, and let's see what happens. I'm not recording the audio directly from the Spectrum. There's not really much to hear, but I've got the television next to me that's playing the sound, so hopefully there should be some of that will come through. Okay, let's see if something comes up. Program flight, so that's a good sign. It's making unusual noises, but it should be alright. Now, program flight with lowercase letters. Okay, so over the last decade, with the increasing power of computers, pilots have been trained to fly new airliners on large-scale computer-controlled simulators on the ground. Even on a small microcomputer like the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, the essential parameters of flight, the dynamics of the airplane, the navigation of the airplane, the main instruments and the representation of the outside world can be portrayed in real time. Flight simulation includes these effects and represents a small, high-performance, two-engine, propeller-driven airplane. Okay, aspects of flying. The essential controls of an airplane include the joystick, flaps, rudder and engine power. Moving the joystick sideways affects the ailerons on the wings, causing the plane to bank left to the left or right. Moving the joystick forwards and backwards affects the elevators on the tailplane so that the nose of the airplane moves down or up respectively. The aerodynamics of an airplane are extremely complicated. Changing one control usually has more than one effect. For example, the ailerons do not simply cause the plane to roll, but produce a sideways airflow which causes the plane to turn as well. I'm sure all this is very well modelled. Okay, it's loading. Leave your tape running. Okay. Didn't get too excited and turn the tape off. Need to keep going. Okay. You may learn and experience these effects in the simulation. You may. I think that might be the operative word there. The attitude and motion of the airplane is shown by many instruments and navigation aids in the pilot's cockpit, as discussed below. The pilot needs to use these instruments to navigate his airplane onto the right line or vector for approach to a runway, to fly his airplane to the right heading or bearing along that vector, and to approach the runway with the right speed, altitude and descent angle to land the airplane. Typically, the correct approach angle of descent should be around 3 degrees, which implies an altitude of around 6,000 feet at 20 miles out. Okay, 3,000 feet at 10 miles an hour, 1,000 feet at 3 miles. The rudder controls can contribute to the turning of the airplane. When on the ground, while taxiing, the rudder controls also steer the direction of the airplane. Okay. So the instructions carry on. I'm not going to read them all out, there's a lot here. Surprisingly, I won't be playing this with a HOTAS controller. This will be with the keys. A rubber keyed Spectrum that I have. Thankfully it summarises them on the inlay here. Fingers crossed we can figure this out. If it does require a joystick, then I can figure one out. Let's just see if the game loads first. Typically it's about 5 minutes to load these things, but we'll see. Obviously it's got a lot of complicated stuff to load in. Okay, and we're here. Right, so I'll just leave the tape running in case there's anything extra, but I think that's, in fact I'll pause it in case there is anything additional to load. Okay, so we've got the PSION flight simulation. 1 in flight, 2 final approach, 3 takeoff. Okay. Well, let's have a go. I mean, you could read all the instructions, but just quickly scan over them. It says in bold here, never press the brake key. Okay. I suspect that means it's written in a way that possibly that will cause it to crash. Not sure why. Okay, so this is a blind play. I've not actually ever played this before. Thought it might be quite fun to play an older flight sim. It can't get much older than 1982. I think we'll try in flight because then we can at least see what the graphics look like and not have to worry too much about the controls. So I'll press 1. Do you want wind effects? Do I want wind effects? Let's say no for now. Here we go. Right, there's no sound effects at all. So I'm glad I didn't bother trying to set that up. And wow, there's a lot of stuff on the hood and not much out of the window. So it has a quick sort of explanation here of all the controls on the instrument panel. And in the lower half of the screen is the pilot's cockpit view, and it's the instrument panel. There are 5 clock-like dials, a number of gauges, warning lights, and a variety of digital readouts. The 5 clocks from left to right are the instrument landing system. Wow, ILS in this. Okay, that's cool. Airspeed indicator. Okay, so we're going about, what's that, times 10, so about 150 knots. That's not bad. Okay, radio direction finding equipment, which is the sort of compass thing in the middle. The altimeter. So what are we at? About 4,500 feet, so that's good. And the rate of climb indicator. We're climbing slightly, which is great. So I can read this out and not crash into the ground. RDF clock is a large dial in the centre of the instrument panel. A small airplane is drawn in the centre of the dial and points in the direction or heading of the plane. Digital reading on the clock gives the heading in compass degrees of the airplane. So heading 76 degrees, I don't know, it looks like we're going out to sea. The RDF is the most important navigational instrument. At any stage, the plane is logged onto one of a number of beacons on the ground. The position of the current beacon at any stage relative to the direction of the airplane is represented on the RDF clock as a flashing dot near the circumference. Okay, so in Microsoft Flight Simulator, you've got kind of more complicated and more realistic navigation simulation, so you could tune into to a VOR and have some kind of distance measuring equipment and things like that. It looks like they streamlined that and simplified it down to just a kind of a dot saying here's where the airport is, which is fair enough. This isn't supposed, well, I know it claims to be, cutting edge, but that might be a little bit of talk. The fact that it's running on a 48K system, that's pretty good. Right, so the position of the current beacon at any stage relative to the direction of the airplane is represented as a flashing dot. If you wish to head directly for a beacon, bank the airplane until the flashing dot moves around the circumference to the 12 o'clock position. Okay, so I think we'll probably do that in a sec. Airspeed with 1 needle, blah blah. Okay, that's straightforward. Altimeter, yeah, usual sort of. We're up to nearly 6,000 feet as I've been talking. Rate of climb measures the vertical speed in 1,000 feet per minute. Okay, that's a rather funky R they've got on the ROC there. Okay, power. Okay, so we're at sort of about 80% power. Fuel, plenty of fuel. Flaps. Where's the flaps? Oh yeah, okay, we've got the flaps down. That's probably why we're climbing a bit. Okay, gears up, good. Beacon range bearing, so BCN, RGE bearing, alright, okay. So these are the things in the middle. Digital readout gives information on the current logged on beacon. Beacon gives the beacon call sign of the log on beacon, so we're heading towards ME, wherever that is. RGE gives its range, so 20 nautical miles, and bearing of compass degrees relative to the airplane, 0. Interesting. I would have thought it would be more like 270, but okay. ILS, we're not going to worry about that just now. Skip that section. RA radio altimeter is the digital readout part of the ILS, so ignore that as well. There's a lot of stuff about ILS. We'll come back to that, I think. So, the controls are the cursor keys. So we'll just try a simple dive. Okay, so that's climb. Okay, good. Now it looks a little bit like it's controlling a bit like Microsoft Flight Simulator in that you set a dive or a climb and it will continue to do that until you sort of cancel it out with an alternative movement. Okay, so we're going into a bit of a steep dive there. It's quite laggy, so we need to sort of be careful there, I think. Alright, so let's see what happens. We're going to turn around a 90-degree turn. Okay. Oh, there's some detail on the ground. There's some kind of wobbly thing there. And we're dipping a little bit, so let's raise the nose slightly. Well, you really need a lot of imagination for this. Well, that Wibble has jumped over there, so I wonder if we are actually flying over the ocean. I'm not sure. That might be another airport. The Spectrum games can often be monochrome, and they may have just picked blue for no good reason. Okay, so start leveling off. Okay. Now, in theory, this mark on the ground might actually be the airport. We're going to buzz over it at 6,000 feet and see what we can see. I mean, so far it's probably, visually far less sophisticated than Microsoft Flight Simulator, but if you in these older games you tend to have to use your instruments anyway, so what's out of the window isn't really very helpful. There has to be significantly more detail for you to use any sort of visual flight style. Just going to quickly check the other controls. We've got Z and X for the rudder, P and O for the power. I don't think we need any more power. In fact, we can just sort of see how quickly that responds. That's not too bad. Increase or decrease flaps with F and D. I'm going to Press F a few times, nothing seems to be happening. Oh no, there it is. There's a little, I don't know if it's showing up very clearly. There's like a black line in this sort of yellow arc. It's hard to get a sense of how performing the game is, but I'm getting 2 or 3 FPS vibes from it. That turn was fairly responsive, I thought. Can't seem to do much with the flaps though. Still, they look to be raised, so that's all right. You can lower and raise the landing gear, and we can cycle through the beacons. Switch from cockpit display to navigational map. Oh, okay, so that's useful. There's a map built in. So I press M for the map. Wow, okay, here we go. So, I'm hoping the game's paused at this point. Right, so there's quite a lot of detail here. We've got ME and MW. There's a main there. It's a main airport, I suppose. Doesn't actually explain where we're at. I don't think it's necessarily a real place. But it looks a little bit like the ground's blue, just wherever we are, because there's a lake there. Lake Tri on the top left, Lake Orb, and Lake Long. Okay. So let's fly around again. See if we've. Okay, range 6. This is kind of fun. I mean, it definitely requires a bit of imagination. But I didn't realise it was as sophisticated as this, having a map and some kind of actual locations we can fly around. It's pretty good. So I don't know how much of this airport's going to appear on the screen. Also, the capture system I've got is composite video, so it's probably looking particularly fuzzy, but this is kind of how it was when I was a kid playing my cousin's Spectrum. I don't know if I'd have known that it was as sophisticated as that, you know, this as having actual locations. I might have thought of some kind of flight plan, but let's have a look. I mean, we've got the airport here. It's weird that they've chosen blue for the ground. You'd have thought they would have picked green. An odd stylistic choice there, I think. It's perfectly capable of doing green the way they've done the blue. But perhaps they wanted it to look more like schematic. I don't know. I really have no explanation for it. Okay. It's going to bring the map up again. So we're flying over Main Airport. And I think what I'd like to do is fly over to Lake Orb. So we're heading the wrong way. We need to do a 90-degree turn. So what we'll do is we'll... Oh! Uh-oh! I have no idea what happened. You crashed into the ground. Excuse me. So, that answers the question of, is the game running while the map's running? Yes. I don't remember being that low. I should have checked my check my instruments better next time. Okay, so now I've got more of a sense of the game. I think I'm going to play again from takeoff. Landing's going to be really difficult. Do you want wind effects? No, I don't think so. Wind might be nice if you know, to play with later, but right now this is a bit much. Just to fly as we are. So I'm going to bring the map up, see where we're at. Okay, we're on Main Airport, heading east. So we can do what I'd planned to this time. Hopefully this time not crash into the ground. And it looks like they've set the beacon that says OA. So we want 08 there. which is the one to the northeast of Lake Orb. So, in theory, if you press B a bunch of times... Okay, it's going through them all. I think I've gone past it now. OA. OB. Okay, it's not an 8, is it? It's an OB. It's just the font's a little misleading. Okay. Alright, so what we do now then? Set some flaps. Is it D for decrease flap extent, F for increase flap extent? So we want F a few times. Oh, it's really unresponsive on the flaps. I think it's probably simulating the time it takes for the mechanism to... It's not like we're controlling the throttle, it's something has to move in response to this input, so... Oh, it's tedious. That's enough flaps. We don't really need flaps, I don't think. We shouldn't need flaps, I should say. But who knows what they thought when they were making this game. Increase throttle. Okay, let's do that. You know, it's not sophisticated enough to have ATC to get in touch with, so let's just take off. The whole world is ours. Right, I have no idea how long this runway is. I can just see a bunch of flickering dots. So I think getting up in the air as quickly as possible is probably a good idea. But let's have our speed above 10, or 100 I should say. Okay, this looks like the end of the runway is coming up. So let's climb. Come on. You can do it. Up we go. 200 feet. Let's not climb too high, too steeply I mean. And raise the flaps. Oh, come on. And you want the gear, I suppose. What's gear? G. No, it's just G's a toggle. Okay, up, ooh, up. Up, down, up, down. Okay, we're up. Okay. Now, our bearing, 58 degrees, so we need to turn left 58 degrees, I suppose. So I wonder what a lake looks like if the ground's blue. Okay, level off. So we've got 37 nautical miles. We'll drop the power a little bit. Now we're climbing, so I'm going to risk putting the map up briefly. Okay, we've got quite a ways to go. So while we're doing that, I'm going to have a quick look at the ILS system. ILS is the instrument landing system dial on the left of the panel. Looks like it's doing something, I think. Might explain that. It is a guidance system which aids the pilot in approach to the runway. A radio beacon at the start of the runway emits a signal, the position of which is displayed on the ILS as a flashing dot. When the airplane is on the correct approach, the flashing dot will be at the centre of the ILS. If it is not at the centre, the pilot should steer towards the dot. Thus, if the dot representing the runway is on the left, the pilot should bank to the left until the dot moves to the centre. If it is above the centre, plane is too low and the joystick should be pulled back. Okay. Oh, there was a dot, it's disappeared, so I suspect that runway we took off from has an ILS. I didn't actually check the RA, the radio altimeter value, but I'm guessing that had something on it. The radio altimeter is a digital readout and part of the ILS system. A reflected radio signal from the ground measures the height in feet of the airplane from the ground to the wheels. It gives a precise measurement for landing. The plane at reasonably high altitude without worrying... Oh, hang on, I've skipped a page, here we go. Okay, right, fair enough. That's the end of the ILS stuff. It's basically just saying this ILS, aim towards the dot. There's a section on flaps, and it just says that you shouldn't fully extend them, or you'll risk a stall, which is reasonable. With the flaps retracted, the stall speed of the plane is 80 knots. That's pretty good. While with full flaps, the stall speed is 60 knots. So it's a little more demanding than like a Cessna or something, which I think will stall a lot at a slightly slower speed. But there's not much in it. Extending the flaps so the plane is at high speed could possibly damage or tear off the wings of the plane. I like when they put stuff like that in the manual because, yes, it's true. Does the game simulate it? I don't want to find out just yet because we're going to fly to this lake and see what that looks like. Well, still a long way to go. We'll quickly check the map though. We're still heading there. We're climbing the whole time though, so I'm going to drop the power a little bit. Okay, there's not much more in the manual. It's pretty thorough, but there's I think unless you're going to try and teach you how to fly a plane, this is probably all you need to know. I'm going to read the section on the map. If you press the M key, the display will change to a navigational chart or map showing the runways, features on the ground such as lakes and the position of navigational beacons. The map shows the 4 compass points. Then it goes on to list what those are. And okay, there are 2 airports, a large international airport called Maine and a small local airport called Club. Maine has a long runway of over a mile in length and is therefore easy to land on in a small plane. Club, however, is a small local airport and therefore has a small, short runway, of some 800 yards. The runway of Maine lies along the east-west. Therefore, on your final approach for landing plane, you must be travelling on a heading of exactly 90 degrees or 270 degrees. The runway of Club, on the other hand, lies along the line north to south. Okay. The map also shows the position of the various navigational beacons and a variety of landmarks and features on the ground. Near the airport Maine, there are 2 beacons some 3 miles beyond each end of the runway with call signs of ME and MW. Okay, so Maine East and Maine West, I guess. The airport Club has 2 beacons, CN, CS. Okay. There are 3 other navigational beacons, OA, OB, and OC. So navigation. The most difficult part of flying is the approach and landing at an airfield. You can experiment with the controls in varying the speed, altitude and direction of the plane at a reasonably high altitude without worrying about the navigation. If you wish to land the plane, I'm brave enough to try and land the plane. I think I will. I think it might be fun to give it a go. If you wish to land the plane over, you have to navigate the plane onto the right vector and onto the right course, and you will have to approach the runway at roughly the right glide angle. This is a difficult task and requires a lot of practice and experience before you can achieve a landing successfully. The map and instruments will help you determine your position precisely. You will then need to think of the approximate manoeuvres and course to approach the airfield on the right flight path. The runway of the airport Maine lies east-west in the simulation on a line, or vector, from 90 degrees to 270 degrees or vice versa. You may approach the runway from either end. I'm wondering if on the map that the world kind of wraps around. So if we fly off the east edge of the map, we'll just wrap around to the west side. So it might be that we can land on Maine, which I'd prefer to do, my first attempt, by turning right and flying off the edge of the map, although that might take a long time, given how long it's taken us to get to this lake. Anyway, where were we? Okay, it's just saying you can land on either end of the runway. If you use the beacon ME, you will need to fly the plane until the beacon is on a bearing 270. If you bank onto this bearing on a course or heading of 270, we'll be flying on exactly the right path for the approach. As you fly towards the beacon ME, to keep on the right flight path, you must ensure that both the heading and beacon coincide at 270. Okay. As you fly over the beacon at the later stages of the approach, the bearing of the beacon will of course change to 90 degrees. Okay, fair enough. Similarly, you may use any of the other beacons to set a course for a particular flight objective. When heading directly for a beacon, remember that your heading and the beacon bearing must always coincide precisely. Okay. Now we're heading still quite high up in the air, so let's dip down a bit. I think what we're looking at in front of us is the lake. Oh, I'm getting this backwards. A bit confusing because the I wouldn't necessarily have the up and down in this orientation that they have on the spectrum. It's a bit it's throwing me a little bit. Okay, so we don't want to head down too far. That's maybe a bit much. Rip the wings off by overspeed. Just realised I left the tape cassette playing on like pause mode. That's making a load of noise, so apologies if I've not been able to remove that. Okay, this is gripping high action gameplay. Okay. Flying is difficult for the uninitiated, and if you have trouble navigating yourself to the runway for final landing, you can always use the option at the beginning of the program to give you an automatic approach and allow you to experiment with the final touchdown. I might end up doing that actually because it's going to take so long to travel. I want to wrap this video up, before the sun sets. Once you have touched down, you must reduce the power to 0 to bring the plane to a halt. You may taxi and steer using the rudder controls and take off again. So that's pretty much the entire manual of PSION Flight Simulator. Flight Simulation, I should say. I should be precise there because I think there are some other games called Flight Simulator or something like that. But this is Flight Simulation. There we go, there's Orb Lake. Lake Orb. So, what should we do? I think I'm going to turn around and try and land on main runway. So I'm going to set the navigation beacon to ME, main east. And then turn this thing around. So we turn left so we can witness the amazing graphics of Lake Orb. Look at that. And we're losing a bit of altitude while we're doing this, but that's okay because I kind of feel like I'm too high up anyway. Right, bye-bye Lake Orb. So this is an ILS runway we're coming up to, so in theory, this should be the easier one to land at. But there's all kinds of reasons why, why it could go badly, so I look forward to finding out what actually happened. So I can already see some flickering in the distance, some light blue pixels. So I'm assuming that those are the first glimpses of Main Airport, Main International. Okay. I'm not sure at what distance the ILS will activate, but I think probably a little closer than 24 nautical miles. Put a bit more power in, try and get us there a little faster. But you can't rush these things, can you? I'm also thinking about checking the map because, yeah, our approach is going to come in at quite a tight angle. So although it says that there's 3 nautical miles between the beacon and the runway, I think that's not enough for us to get lined up properly. So what I'm going to do is head sort of more southerly for a bit, check our angles after a while, try and get a straight approach, because we're going to need all the help we can get, I think. My main concern is losing speed. I have no idea what the brakes are. I don't even think it has brakes. But then again, I don't think it'll matter too much if we land on the runway and leave it again. I don't think it's necessarily going to tell us we crashed because we got into the grass. I'm glad I'm recording this video though, because I think I probably wouldn't have paid this much attention to it. I think it's nice to actually be a bit more thorough and properly read the manual. Because I mean, you know, these in 1982, this was sort of roughly cutting edge. I think Sublogic definitely had them beat, but they had stronger hardware to work with. But they weren't trying to make something throwaway with this. I think they were really trying to make something sophisticated, and so I think it deserves a bit of respect. You know, sort of read the manual without getting too deep into into that. Okay, we've not done a very good job of getting a good angle there, so I'm going to really, I think, maybe head sort of 170 for a bit to really hammer home that we want to approach this on a more westerly direction. Fortunately, we seem to turn very effectively, which is really nice. It's not like a slow turn. We can navigate this thing. It's quite a nimble aircraft, which is good. It doesn't go into any explanation of what the real aircraft is. I don't think it's inspired by anything in particular. It says twin engine. So I imagine some kind of maybe like Beechcraft type looking thing. I'm not sure. Again, you have to use your imagination with these games. I'm just looking at OBS and I don't think this video is going to compress very well. It's very, very fuzzy. Okay, so we're 7,000 feet up, which is probably about right. Okay, I'm a bit happier with the approach, but I think I'll probably do another southerly turn. It's a good way of losing altitude, actually. It's just to turn around here. I'm going to quickly check the map as well, because there's some more dots in front of me. I'm wondering what they are. So that could be Lake Long, I suppose. It's a long way away, but it's probably also quite big. Okay, so we're on a, what would you call it? On the same latitude as the airport now, so we can have a think about lining up with the right angle. Ooh, maybe losing a little bit more altitude than I want there. I'm surprised the ILS hasn't kicked in, but I'm looking forward to that. And then we have main, I think that's main airport. There's a... Got the wrong way again. There's another dot over to the right. Now, I'm not sure where the sky is. Where the ground is, I mean. Okay, rate of climb's coming down, so we should start seeing it again soon. Oh, we've shot up to 8,000 feet. We'll lower the power a bit. And we've gone crazed because it's behind us now. Ah! I've totally lost control of the aircraft. Okay. Okay, let's sort of figure out where we're at. It keeps rolling to the right, and I don't know why. Are we... Oh, we're stalling, that's why. Just seen the airspeed. Okay. Alright, we've leveled off again now. Probably need a bit more power then if we're going to stall. Okay, where's the map? Where are we? Okay. We need to do a turn. Maybe not so harsh this time. It's a bit disconcerting when you lose the horizon line like that. Let's have some flaps as well. Oh, come on. It feels like you've got to manually crank the flaps down. Okay, now I'm assuming this flashing dot in front of us is the airport. Okay, so keep an eye on the speed. I feel like we should be seeing the ILS coming in soon. Got to trust your instruments, I suppose. 13 miles it says, so what I might do actually is set beacon MW. Because that'll give us a slightly straighter bearing. That sort of makes sense, I'm not sure. There should be a runway right in front of us, so possibly, possibly going a bit mad here because I can't see it. Well, we'll just assume that this line that I can see in front press the wrong button. I think the important thing is that I'm going to try and land. Beyond that, I don't know. Well, let's do something sensible and put the gear down. Give us our best chance at landing. It's quite disconcerting that there's no sound at all. I suppose it would be a bit irritating just to have a constant droning, buzzing noise, which is pretty much all the Spectrum could do anyway. So why waste the CPU cycles on that when you could be simulating all this stuff? I should have left the cassette running. That sound of the mechanism on that would have added a bit more ambience. Okay, so we're 1,000 feet up. There should be a runway here. I don't see it. I'm slightly concerned. Maybe the draw distance on it's going to kick in at some point and it'll show me something. I'm going to quickly roll to the right and to see if there's something else that we're missing. Because there's something over there on the right. I'm slightly concerned that that's the airport and that we somehow... It's right there. Where is the airport? Well, drop flaps a bit more. Drop power. We're going to crash. Raise power. Oh, it's going to bug me if I can't land. If I miss the airport, that's fine, but if I can't see the airport, I didn't have a chance. Unless this whole thing, unless this line on the left is the left edge of the runway and the line on the right is the right end of the runway, that's particularly wide for a runway. Ah, there was some activity on the radar altimeter there. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. Right, well, at least we'll crash in sight of home. Now, come on, a little bit more optimism. Here we go. ILS has kicked in. So we need to get this into the centre. This is exciting. I did not think a ZX Spectrum game from 1982 would be this stressful. Well, this thrilling. Wow, our rate of climb's pretty poor. Not got a great sense of... Yeah, 700 feet. I'm dripping with sweat like an airplane. Okay, a bit more flaps, I think. That's what you do, isn't it? We're a little bit to the right, so we need to get this ILS lined up a bit better. Come on, we can do it. I'm not very lined up. I'm glad I didn't switch the wind on. Oh, here we go. It's quite a detailed runway when you get up close. So what, we're too low, we're too off to the side. This is terrible. Come on. Nose up. Ah, no. Ah. you crashed into the ground. Oh, how disappointing. Well, I think I'll call it there. This has been a long episode. That was Flight Simulation for the ZX Spectrum. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.